sorry.
CaliKidOfficial.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the CaliKidOfficial podcast. This is episode, I believe, 6 or 7, not sure, but a lot happened this week, so this is going to pretty much be a pretty lengthy podcast. So let's get right into it. So this past weekend, we saw the rematch of Wilder and Fury. The entrances was pretty cool. Wilder's entrance was dope with the black suit he had on, and it had like these red illuminated eyes coming from it. It was like a skull crown. But like before the fight even started, the atmosphere kind of gave me the same vibes as the first match with AJ and Andy Ruiz. It kind of seemed like he was taking a while to get ready, and when Fury was coming out on his entrance, which he made his entrance on like this makeshift throne, he hadn't even had his costume on yet. And so basically we get into the fight. It starts off, fairly minimal. Fury didn't really throw too many punches in rounds 1 and 2. And I thought Wilder won those first 2 rounds because he was the more active fighter, and he was landing the bigger blows in those first 2 rounds. But then we get to round 3, and then everything just, takes a turn for the worse in terms of Wilder's case, because he gets hit in the side of the ear, which knocks his equilibrium out, and he's bleeding out his ear, and he gets knocked to the ground. So pretty much after that, it pretty much went downhill from there. That one round pretty much tied up the fight, and Fury pretty much dominated from round 3 through 7, which ended in a TKO. But my thoughts on the fight: after the match was over, Wilder said that his costume had an effect on his legs, which, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with that, because if you look at his stature, he's not like a thick dude, and his legs is very skinny as well. And then the costume that he was wearing, he said it was like at least 40 something pounds, and then you add that on with the helmet, and then on top of that, he didn't even practice walking to the ring with it on. So you wearing that, and then you wearing this mask, so that's kind of like restricting your breathing. And you walking down to the ring, and then you walking up the steps, so you kind of like gassing yourself out. And then before he even put the costume on, he was kind of like pacing back and forth. So it was a lot going on. He also mentioned some outside things going on. To me, it seems like his head wasn't in this fight, which is why Fury was able to dominate so easily. Because if you go back to the first fight, it was a very different experience. And then also when I was looking at the fight, some of the things that Fury was doing, he was fighting very dirty. He would put Wilder in like headlocks and lean on him and punching him in the back of the head and stuff like that. And that's why the ref had took a point off. So some people are saying that Fury might have been cheating with by putting something in his gloves, because they were showing the top portion of the glove where your fist is supposed to go all the way to the front was very flimsy when it was being swung. It was like his fist was at the middle portion of the glove. So, but I don't know about that, but I do think the costume and him not preparing, and it did play a role on him losing the fight, as well as whatever was going on outside of the fight. But I also think he needs to get with someone that can develop his punching technique, because he's pretty much a one-dimensional fighter. You know, he fills you out with the jab, and he's trying to land that right hand, and then when you close in on him, it kind of like, you know, frazzles him a bit. So I don't know what's gonna change between now and then. I've heard rumors that he's fired his trainer because his trainer threw in the towel. But you gotta look at it this way. Even though he said he wanted to go out on his shield and he was a warrior, which he was, because even though he got knocked down a couple of times, and a lot of that was due to his equilibrium being off, he still got back up. He didn't, you know, go sit in the corner and look at his corner to give him the signal for what to do, or, you know, spit out his mouthpiece like Joshua did in the first fight. But the corner basically, you know, was looking out for his best interest. You know, yeah, you want to go out on your shield, but you also gotta look at it like this: live to fight another day. Because if you look after the fight, the side of his jaw looked like it has swollen up too. But overall, it was a pretty cool event. We also saw, I believe it was Charles Martin and Gerald Washington on the undercard. They were fighting for a heavyweight title eliminator, and Charles Martin got the victory with a knockout punch. So overall, the event was pretty cool. And then Wilder's camp has already reached out for a third fight, which they're saying could possibly happen in the summer, sometime in July or something like that. But I don't know how usually, well, I know in the UFC, when fighters suffer some type of serious damage, they usually give them like a suspension. So kind of interesting. I wonder how it works in boxing, because like they just had to fight in February, July, so that would be what, 5 months later. And I think usually you get 3 months of suspension or something like that, but who knows? Maybe he's a quick recoverer, but he's gonna have to dig deep. If the third fight does happen, he's gonna have to come with something new. He can't just, you know, sit behind that right hand waiting to try to land that. I also think he should instead of pacing backwards and having Fury come to him, I think he should go to Fury, because Fury, he basically bulked up in weight and was laying on him and fighting dirty to tire him out. If that fight don't happen, then the next logical fight would be Fury versus AJ for all the belts, which who knows if that's going to happen, because Eddie Hearn pretty much is ducking all the best fighters. They didn't want to fight Wilder. They didn't want to fight Fury. When he lost to Andy, he said, "I wish it was Wilder." But anyways, we also had the beginning of the 2020 NFL Scouting Combine. This is one of the, you know, kind of like the preseason, not in terms of games, but like the preseason to, you know, the return of NFL football, where we get to see, you know, all the talent coming out of college, see how fast they can run, their, you know, their bench press, their lateral movement, you know, things of that nature. And a couple of prospects standing out. One in particular was former Alabama receiver Henry Ruggs III. He ran a 4.2840, which is pretty impressive. So that's definitely gonna boost up his stock. Also from Alabama, we had Jerry Jeudy. He ran a 4.46. Jalen Hurts, he ran a 4.59 out of Oklahoma. And then we had this tight end out of Missouri. His name is Albert Okwuegbunam. 6'5", 258, and he ran a 4.49. So that more than likely he's gonna be I believe they call it a wide tight end. So, but some of the weaknesses they were saying is that he easily gets taken off of his route. He has trouble breaking through certain coverages or something like that. But they did say that, you know, once he gets open, he can really turn it up. But he looks more like a project. I think the best tight end is this guy named Cole Kmet out of Notre Dame. I'm gonna show you, and it's interesting because he has a similar stature to Rob Gronkowski, and their measurables and their combine stats are pretty similar as well, which I thought was pretty interesting. So see right here, 6'6", 262, 10.5-inch hands. Then we go to Rob, 6'6" as well, 264. So 2-pound difference, 10 3/4. So it's Rob's hands is slightly bigger. If you look at Rob's weaknesses, the only weaknesses they put was durability concerns. They said he doesn't have great top end speed and may not be able to stretch the field at the next level. Lacks the loosening to make people miss after catch. Well, we've seen his career, and that was very, very false. Whoever gave that analysis need their eyes checked. But yeah, let me go to his Cole Kmet's 40-yard time was 4.7. Let's see how I close that. Rob's was 4.68, so a 0.02 difference. So pretty much similar speed. Vertical leap, 33.5. Kmet got him in that. His is 37. Broad jump, 123. So I think he's a bit more athletic than Rob was. Yeah, because Rob's was 119 and his is 123. Cone drill, 7.44. Oh, they don't have that on there for him. 20-yard shuttle, 4.41. So yeah, they have similar measurables. So if I'm New England, I will be having him high up on my draft board. So, but ain't no telling, he can go very early. I'm pretty sure he's going to be a first round pick. If we can manage to land him, that'd be pretty cool. There's a couple of interesting prospects, but yeah, if you saw it, he has the same measurables, the same combine results. I think the only negatives they said about him was like his run blocking ability. Body control and strength as a blocker needs work. Below average instincts and angles as a move blocker. So that's not good, especially when you're doing toss and sweeps. You need to be stout. And Rob was always a good blocker, even coming out of Arizona. Inefficient and slow getting into block fits. Needs to play with earlier inside hands and rolled hips at point of attack. Too tall coming up the ball into his routes. Has issues playing through contact within the first 5 yards. Upright into breaks, allowing defenders to read and jump routes. Questionable hand strength to secure contests. So basically, he has run blocking deficiencies, and they're questioning his catching ability as well. Well, the strength in his catches. So, but it's gonna be pretty interesting once the draft airs, which I believe is in April. And it's going to be out of Vegas, and they're going to be ferrying in the prospects on the water. So I don't know how that's going to work, but that's interesting. His comparison is Tyler Higbee. So yeah, that's going to be crazy. Oh, and also speaking of the NFL, we have the collective bargaining agreement for the 2020-21 season. And there's been a lot of pushback from the players. You know, I'm with the players on this because the NFL is thinking more about greed and not the health of the players. They want to extend the regular season to 17 games, and they want to add 2 more teams into the playoffs. So instead of 12 teams, it's going to be 14. And instead of 2 wild card teams, there's going to be 3, so that means in each conference there's only going to be 1 team with a first round bye. So I don't agree with that. They did address the other players' concerns in terms of upping the pay and pensions and stuff like that, but a lot of players had something to say about that. I know maurkice pouncey, he was very, very outspoken about it. So he says Man, this shit's so fucking crazy, man. I vote no. Fuck that shit. NFLPA, the dudes at the top, the leaders, man. That shit all fucking bullshit. Fuck that. They ain't looking out for the best of the players. If y'all want my vote, the Pouncey twins vote no. Pouncey added, if any player on any one of our teams, if y'all hurting for rent money or anything while we go through this lockout, call us, Pouncey said. Man, we got way more money than what they had back in the days. All the vets on each team, stand the fuck up, stand up, show these guys that we care about them. They trying to sign a bullshit ass deal just so these motherfuckers and the sitting president can go around and smile and say, I got something done. Because he said, you ain't get shit done. So yeah, he's very outspoken. And then we had a video as well.
And the shit's so fucking crazy, man. I vote no. Fuck that shit. Our NFLPA, the dudes at the top, the leaders, man, that shit all fucking bullshit. Fuck that. They ain't looking out for the best of the players. And if y'all want my vote, the Pouncey twins vote no. And if any player, any one of our teams, if y'all heard for rent money or anything while we go through this lockout, call us. Man, we got way more money than what they had back in the days. We ain't got to worry about that. All the vets on each team, stand the fuck up. Stand up. Show these guys that we care about them. Man, I care about all you young players, and I love you guys to death. I ain't gonna let y'all down. Trust and believe. They trying to sign a bullshit ass deal just so these motherfuckers sitting there president can go around and smile and say, I got something done. You ain't get shit done.
Yeah, I might have to mute it because he's playing music in there, but yeah, it is a bullshit deal. They're putting greed before the players' health and safety. It's like why tinker with something that's not broken? There's nothing wrong with a 16-game season, and there's nothing wrong with the current playoffs. It's like if anything, you're gonna dilute the playoffs by putting in scrub teams. But yeah, other people's comment like Russell Wilson. The NBA and MLB are doing it right. Players come first. All NFL players deserve the same. We should not rush the next 10 years for today's satisfaction. I vote no. And then we had JJ Watt. He said, hard no on that proposed CBA. So pretty much all the players is against it. And on the owners' end, they basically said they're not budging and that they're not going to revise the CBA that they proposed because they've already revised it. So what likely could happen is that we end up with a lockout for the 2020-2021 season. So if things don't get worked out. And the CBA has a lot to do with the structuring of how players are going to get paid as well. So that's going to interfere with some things too. So it's always a chaotic mess. But this is what happens, in the sports world, especially when the owners want to tinker with something and be greedy. But it is what it is. So in basketball, we had LeBron James pretty much humiliate Josh Hart by posterizing him with a dunk and pretty much, putting his nuts in his face. That mess was crazy. Like, look at that. Get that boy a helmet. Jesus Christ. And then you see everybody going crazy. But yeah, that was crazy. And then Rihanna said, somebody check on that boy Josh Hart. So that was crazy. They ended up beating the Pelicans. It was a closer contest, but they ended up beating them. And then also LeBron James is suffering from another groin injury, and the thought around the league and in the media is that the Lakers should rest him pretty much until the start of the playoffs, so he's refreshed and they have a better shot of making it through the playoffs, because this is what happened last year. The main pieces of the team started getting hurt and it pretty much derailed their season, because as of right now they have the first place seed in the Western Conference, and so they need to make sure that LeBron gets healthy. And then they were playing the Golden State Warriors, and Green got a tech for screaming at the ref over a call that he didn't like. And you see LeBron trying to hide behind his teammates laughing, and then he quickly pulled up and came up with a straight smile. So I thought that was pretty funny. So that was crazy. But yeah, they should monitor the situation with LeBron and pretty much low manage him like they do with Kawhi on the Clippers. They should do the same thing with LeBron, so he doesn't risk re-aggravating this injury and making it worse than it already is. Also, so on Thursday, WWE had their annual Super Showdown show in Saudi Arabia. I got a lot to say about it, but to start off, the first match was the Viking Raiders versus the OC, which is Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. The match started off pretty interesting. The Viking Warriors was pretty much dominating for most of the match. Eric, he went up to the top rope. Eric is the heavier of the Viking Raiders. He went up to the top rope for a moonsault. He hits the moonsault, but he misses and lands on his stomach. And then Luke Gallows, he comes into the ring and knocks off his partner Ivar off the apron, and they pretty much hit Eric with their finisher and pretty much win the match. So that was the first match. And then we also had, after that, immediately it was well, before we go to the second match, I kind of thought it was a cheap finish, and you're going to notice as I'm talking throughout the video about this event, there was a lot of cheap finishes. You'll see what I have to say to sum it up at the end. But the second match, our series of matches, was pretty much a gauntlet match, and the winner of it got like this trophy. Is called the Tuwak Mountain Trophy, and it's basically it was a yellow crystal-like form made into the shape of that mountain over there, and the mountain is supposed to represent like a sign of strength, so it's kind of like a symbolic gesture type of thing. So the first match in the series of gauntlets was R-Truth versus Lashley. R-Truth comes out, he does his usual stick, rapping and all that stuff. Lashley comes out with Lana briefly, and she's got on like this grandma gown outfit with heels on, which they be disrespecting the women, and I'm gonna go more into depth about that. But pretty much she briefly came out, went backstage. Lashley pretty much lost to him, which they have not been handling him correctly. As far as I'm concerned, he should be fighting for the Universal title, not in these goofy segments. Because if you go back to his run in TNA, that was his best work. But anyway, the match, Lashley was pretty much, dominating. It ended pretty quickly with another cheap finish. And then Lashley got pissed off and pretty much laid waste to Truth. And then the second match was Truth versus Andrade, I do believe. Yeah, it was Truth versus Andrade. Andrade is the current United States champion. They were fighting back and forth. Truth was already hurt from earlier. They were throwing these punches. At one point, Andrade had went up to the top rope, and then Truth had knocked him off the top rope, and he fell into the outside, so that kind of hurt him. He got back in the ring. They was throwing punches to the face, and then Andrade went for some type of move, and they ended up bumping heads, and Andrade pretty much fell to the floor, and Truth fell backwards onto him and pinned him. So another cheap finish. Then we get Truth versus Eric Rowan. He has his gimmick now where he comes to the ring with this cage with a cloth over it. So Eric was pretty much dominating Truth in that match as well. The fight spills to the outside ring. He throws Truth into the steel steps, which has that cage on top. It knocks the cage onto the floor. Eric Rowan gets pissed off, picks up the steel stairs and hits Truth with it. So Truth wins another match by disqualification. Then we get the fourth match, which is AJ Styles. He comes out, pretty much makes quick work of R-Truth and submits him to the calf crusher. Then the final gauntlet match is supposed to be AJ versus Rey Mysterio, but we get a little chuckle from AJ Styles because he knows that his group, the OC, has taken Rey Mysterio out of the equation. So basically, he argues at the ref to, give him the trophy. A series of events happen. Pans backstage, we see the OC land on the floor, and then the camera zooms into a pair of black boots, and we all know whose boots those are. It ends up being the Undertaker. The Undertaker comes out. AJ complains to the ref about Undertaker not even being in the match. And the reason why Undertaker and the AJ pairing is happening is because AJ has said that he's the greatest wrestler of all time from any area, from any era. And so, Undertaker pretty much answered the call. He beats him with a choke slam, although it was kind of like a botched choke slam because he grabbed him around the neck, but when he lifted him up, his neck kind of like slipped from his hand. So as he was coming back down, he kind of like caught him and then slammed him. So that was kind of botched. So that whole thing was, I didn't really like that. I ain't like how they basically put Lashley and R-Truth in the match. They pretty much embarrassed Lashley, and the only explanation I can think of them having R-Truth winning those 3 matches, albeit by weird circumstances, is that they're going to give him a shot at the United States title against Andrade, because their match ended with the them bumping heads or whatever. So that's the only thing that makes sense. If they don't give him a title shot, then it's like more disrespect. So that was pretty much the end of that. Then after that we get Humberto versus his cousin Garza. Not much really happened in that fight. Garza ends up winning. Then we get the New Day defending their SmackDown tag titles against Miz and Morrison. That was pretty much another cheap finish. Referee gets distracted. Kofi gets hit in the ribs with a steel chair by Morrison. And then Miz does the schoolboy pin and pulls Kofi's tights, and they win the tag team belts. Then we get Seth Rollins and Buddy Murphy versus the Street Profits, which consists of, Angelo Dawkins and Montez Ford. Another cheap finish in this fight. The only highlight I can say about this is that there was a lot of, interesting spots, frog splashes, rope dives, tag team finishers, things of that nature, but it was another cheap finish. Once again, referee gets distracted. Angelo Dawkins gets hit with the stomp, and then he pretty much gets pinned, and that's pretty much the end of that match. So this is what I was saying earlier. There was a bunch of cheap finishes. I don't understand how the booking can be so incompetent in WWE. If you look at their shares, where they started and where they're at now, you can see why their shares are continuing to fall. They've fallen at this point in time by at least 40%, and they're going to continue to because they keep putting out a crappy product. Then after that, we get Dolph Ziggler accompanied by Bobby Roode against the hometown guy Mansoor. Match starts. Bobby Roode pretty much gets tossed from ringside. Pretty interesting back and forth. And then Mansoor eventually hits Dolph Ziggler with his finisher, which is like Dolph is facing this way and Mansoor is facing this way. He has his left arm around his neck, and then he goes up the turnbuckle, does his backflip into this DDT, and then he goes onto the turnbuckle, hits a moonsault, and lands his knees on the midsection of Dolph Ziggler, which I thought was a pretty interesting finisher. But overall, it was like, to me, it's kind of like pandering because, They're in the guy's hometown, similar to how they gave Jinder Mahal the title because they were trying to push into the India market. So that was that. Then we get Lesnar versus Ricochet, which he pretty much had no chances in this match. So they both make their entrances. Referee announces Ricochet, then he begins to try to announce Lesnar. And then, of course, Paul Heyman does his shtick, and he says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa." And then he says to the guy, "What the hell are you doing?" And then he gives him this dumb face like, and then he goes on to announce Lesnar. And so the match starts. Ricochet, immediately goes on the offensive and tries to do a running drop kick, which Brock Lesnar sees it coming and he pretty much clotheslines him. Then he hits him with a vertical suplex, 3 German suplexes, and an F5, and that pretty much ends the match. It was pretty much a squash match. It only lasted for a total of under 2 minutes. So I think that was pretty much to send a message to his WrestleMania opponent, Drew McIntyre. But I do believe McIntyre is going to win the belt at Mania because he deserves it. Then we get Roman Reigns versus King Corbin in a steel cage match. Now, to me, this was the best match of the night. There was no cheap finishes. There was a lot of great spots. There was a built-in rivalry from weeks and weeks of them going toe-to-toe with each other. So King Corbin, he enters the ring on a throne, and the people below him is carrying him to the ring. Roman enters, he's carrying a chain in his hand, because the steel cage is the only thing keeping him closed. Is like this lock that can easily be popped off. So Roman brought the chain to lock this steel cage, so the chances of escape wasn't high. And so as Roman is trying to lock the steel chain around the cage door, Corbin pretty much ambushes him and tries to steal away the key from Roman's pocket. He eventually successfully does. He makes several attempts, one out of the gate, and then a couple over the on the side, the side cage wall, but they are negated. I think Roman only tried to make one escape on the side gate. So they're fighting on the side gate. Corbin, he got some good hits on him throughout the match, but Roman eventually overpowered him. At one point, he hit Corbin a couple of times, a couple of Superman punches on the cage wall, and Corbin ended up falling on the top turnbuckle on his groin region. And then as he's on the top rope, he hits him again with some more Superman punches, and then he ends the match with the chain wrapped around his fist into a Superman punch, and that pretty much ends the match. So overall, that was probably the best match of the night, because all the other matches was pretty much. We get Bayley versus Naomi for the SmackDown title. Once again, you see the women, they coming out in these oversized clothing. In this case, they come out in these oversized t-shirts, which in actuality it restricts the movement of the superstars. So there has to be some other thing that's more suitable for them being over there or whatever, because them wearing oversized clothes ain't doing it. And the fans see it, and the investors see it, and WWE pretty much don't care. They're selling out for money like they've been doing. And that's why the company is suffering, because they don't have any megastars to carry the company. They just have a bunch of people. But anyway, the match starts off. Naomi hits Bayley with she jumps in the air and then she hits the splits and lands on Bayley's midsection. So that was a pretty interesting spot. There was this botched top rope clothesline by Naomi. She kind of landed awkwardly on Bayley. Bayley, she was she pretty much kept the pace of the match slow, which zapped all the energy out of the crowd. If you watch the match, the crowd wasn't really into it because it was so slow and boring. Bayley was doing her submission takedowns, and then she ultimately does like this modified deathlock where she traps Naomi's feet in her oversized t-shirt, and then she hits her with like this face crusher and pins her and wins the match. So that was that. And then the final match of the night, we get the Fiend versus Goldberg. You know, Goldberg does his usual entrance, but, you know, not banging his head this time because he pretty much got concussed the last time and he was bleeding. Fiend makes his entrance. Goldberg steps forward. The Fiend is crouched in the corner. Fiend finally steps forward. They're mouthing off to each other. Goldberg pretty much showing that he's not intimidated like the rest of the Fiend's opponents. Then as the Fiend is taking off his jacket, Goldberg hits him with a spear. He goes for a quick pin. The Fiend kicks out at 1. Then he goes for another spear. Then another spear. And then another spear. So 4 spears. Doesn't do it. And then on that 4th one, the Fiend gets the mandible claw briefly on Goldberg. And then we get the end of the match with Goldberg hitting a struggle hammer, because that wasn't a jackhammer. And if you listen to the match, he let out like this groan that sounded like a wounded animal. And it was pretty much a squash match, just like the other title match. It lasted under 3 minutes. And then, you know, the Fiend hopped up, angry. The lights went out, and then he disappeared. But let me show you what I was talking about.
Fire Goldberg to reach deeper into the arsenal, to the jackhammer, Old Faithful, to put the universal.
That was a struggle spear. That wasn't even a jackhammer. Jackhammer's got power. Now, if this was probably prime Goldberg, then possibly, but he couldn't even lift the Fiend right here, unless of course the Fiend was sandbagging him. But that part was funny. That shit's funny. Yeah, that was a struggle hammer. But yeah, he pretty much squashed him, man. I don't understand that as well. The only thing that makes sense for that is if he's gonna drop the belt to someone at WrestleMania to push somebody over. The contenders, I believe, number 1 should be Lashley, because he's been disrespected so much since he's been on the roster. Matt Riddle, because they have some type of beef, I do believe. Is it Matt Riddle with Lesnar or Goldberg? I think it was with Goldberg. Yeah, they got some type of semi-beef. And then Strowman. So those 3, Lashley, Riddle, Strowman, should contend against Goldberg for the title, because those would be believable matches. And those are also, you know, fresh talent. I don't know what Rusev is doing. I think he's still locked in that stupid feud with Lashley. I don't even know why they even did that. But Lashley should win the Universal title. They should basically book him how TNA did. And I don't understand that. It's like you have these guys that have legit backgrounds. He has a legit MMA background. And look at the dude. He's believable. Not these small cruiserweight dudes fighting for belts against people that outweigh him by 100 pounds and stuff like that. That's crazy. But overall, I gave the event a 2 out of 5, and that was only because there was a couple of decent spots, and the only good match was pretty much a steel cage match. Other than that, it was stupid. And like, the one thing I have against these events in Saudi Arabia is the disrespect that's shown towards the female talent. It's like with WWE, you know what you're going to get. So it's like, why is it that the female talent have to be all covered up and stuff and restricted in their matches when the men are allowed to come out, you know, with their chest out and their stomach out? So I don't think that's cool. I think, as I said earlier, WWE pretty much sold out for the buck at the expense of their talent. And I don't like how they're restricted like that. And then you also had too many cheap finishes. In total, there was 14 matches, and 7 out of the 14 matches were cheap finishes. So 50% of your card was cheap finishes. It's not going to do it. It's not going to do it. Then we have, as I said earlier, Truth. He must be getting a U.S. title shot because that's the only thing that makes sense for him to win those 3 matches. Yeah, both main titles ended in squash matches. I mean, Brock Lesnar's was more convincing. It's like, I don't see the point of building the Fiend up like that. I guess they brought in Goldberg because he's the only one on the roster that, you know, sees through that gimmick and isn't afraid or isn't intimidated. So he has the upper hand. That's pretty much all I have to say about that. But I will be watching WrestleMania to see what happens. That should be interesting. But also they've ruined a lot of superstars. Shinsuke Nakamura, they ruined him. They changed his entrance song to some goofy remix. They made him a heel. They should have put the belt on him. I understand he has like the way he talks is like hard, I guess, for people to understand, but a quick easy fix for that is to put a manager or a speaking piece next to him. Same thing with Asuka. So maybe that's why they didn't push them like that. Lashley has been poorly booked. Who else? A lot of people. And like all the black talent, they lost all their matches. So continued disrespect right there. Anyways, moving on from that, we get the clips. His ex-manager sitting down with DJ Vlad, basically explaining how, you know, 95% of the things that they are rapping about in their music comes from them being near him because he was formerly, you know, a big deal drug mover. So that pretty much confirms what Drake was saying, how what they was rapping about was false. So we have that. We had that both coming from their manager as well as their cousins that they used to run with that did the same thing as well. So when you look at that beef, Drake pretty much won because let's break it down. What did he say about Drake? He said, your dad wears your dad wears Steve Harvey suits. You got a child you're trying to hide from the world. That's false. If you go on TMZ, they reported on him having a child a year before the diss even came out. So that was false. And then if you look at, well, he also talked about his father not being there like that. That's cool. But if you look at it, Drake's responses were more impactful and people liked him better as well. And then what he said about Pusha T was true. You frauding in your rap, so that pretty much kills all your credibility. But let's see, because he says it when he sat down with Vlad. He says, they never had to ask me about no idea of what they have seen, Gonzalez said. But I remember a couple of times, it was like right back in the day, and me and him were sitting there talking, and I said to him, I made a statement for every car I got 8, 9 O's. It was me just talking in general when I said that, and he looked at me, but he ain't say nothing. Then I heard him say it in a rhyme. For every car I got add 9 O's. When I heard it, I was like, man, I said that to him. He was good when it came to that type of stuff. So basically, you was frauding in your raps. I understand, you know, there's a difference between growing up in an environment and seeing things and claiming to be the person doing the things that you're seeing. Those are two completely different things, and you wasn't doing that. So You frauding, dude. You frauding. And then if you look now, he's ice cold. But I no hate against Pusha T or the Clips. Grinding will forever be a classic. That's something I used to do when I was a kid, do the little beat or whatever. But yeah, can't be frauding in your raps. Also, speaking of Drake, we get he posts a picture of the script to the second season of Top Boy, which is a UK-based drama dealing with dealing with drugs, stuff like that. I thought that was pretty cool as well to see the script. So, and it says episode 201, Killing No Murder. So that might, let's see, this is February, that might be coming in the summer. Who knows? But can't wait for that. That was a pretty good show. And then also in basketball, we get Zach LaVine having an outburst against his coach because his coach has basically been criticizing him, and Zach LaVine has pretty much been holding the team down. So in a showdown against OKC, his coach is basically yelling at him from the bench, and then this is his response right here. He says, "I have 40 fucking points." And then also the players on the team are getting fed up with him. The lineups that he's been sending out, from what I've read, have been kind of head scratchers. They have this rookie by the name of Kobe White, and for like 3 consecutive games he was putting up 30 points, but yet he's still a bench player. So that pretty much doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And currently their record is 20-39, which basically means they're not going to make the playoffs. So what I think is going to happen, the coach is going to get fired, or the players are going to end up start demanding trades or holding out or stuff like that. So yeah, the Chicago Bulls have been hell. I mean, at one point they had D Rose before he got hurt, Joakim Noah, but Noah's washed now, and this fool airballing free throws and stuff. But yeah, hopefully they they get everything rectified over there. So in music, we get an explanation from SZA as to why she hasn't really been releasing music. She was going through a depression because she had lost her grandmother, Norma. She was featured on a couple of tracks that SZA put out, and so she basically lost her. And she said that she was going through a depression for like 5 months, and to get over that, she was doing various different treatments, like using crystals and resting and things like that. And then she was also friends with Mac Miller, who passed away, and then her aunt passed away around the same time as Mac, so she got hit with 3 death blows pretty much, back to back to back. So that's a lot for a person to deal with. So she basically stepped away to focus on her mental health as well as her physical health, because when things like that happen, some people, they might not eat. So it's good that she did step away, but she has been working on music. She said that she's been in the studio with Timbaland, and he introduced her to some type of island beats and stuff like that. But she wants to be true to herself. She's kind of afraid of crossing over into being this pop star. She wants to be herself and not sacrificing that, so she's kind of leery of going down that path. But she did do a feature with Justin Timberlake for a song called The Other Side, which is basically for the Trolls World tour soundtrack, which I think is like some type of anime movie. So that's good for her. And you know, when you're depressed like that, you're not in a mood to write. So it's understandable that she took the time to, you know, get her bearings and get things, you know, back good for herself. And then also in boxing, we get the announcement that Canelo Alvarez has narrowed down his next fight to 2 opponents, and both of which is from the UK. We have Callum Smith. He's kind of what would you call it? What do Connor be saying? Oh, he's stuck in the mud. He's stiff. Yeah, he's. When I've seen Callum fight, he is very stiff. So his next fight is between him and Billy Joe Saunders, who have been trying to get a match with Canelo. So those are the 2 potential opponents, and they're slating the bout for May 2nd. So, you know, around, you know, Cinco de Mayo, they always try to do that. So that's gonna be interesting. You know, you see the little banner right here. So yeah, Billy Joe Saunders is the dude on the left. Obviously, the middle is Canelo, and then on the right is Callum Smith. So that should be interesting. But Canelo went up in weight and knocked out a dude, so these guys are gonna have a tough time against him. I'll tell you that. I will tell you that. And lastly, more updates for my Euphoria album, which is dropping April 3rd. My second single, Rev It Up, will be debuting on my YouTube channel March 1st at 10 a.m. I believe it is. Let me go on channel. Yep. March 1st, 10 a.m. So make sure you guys head on over to my YouTube channel. Set the reminder so you guys don't miss out on that. And then my third single is called Ecstasy 1.0. The snippet to that will be released the following week on Saturday. And then that's going to be posted on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, you know, all those social media sites. So you're going to see the snippet for that. And then the following week after, you know, you're going to see the MV for that. And then after that, there's going to be one more single. So yeah, there's that. So the official release date for my album is April 3rd, 2020. That's a Friday. So make sure you guys, when it comes out, buy my album. I will really appreciate the support. Buy my album, stream it. Let me know what you guys think. As I'm putting out these music videos, let me know what you guys think in the comments as well. I also have merch already posted as well to my store on Teespring. There's a link to that if you go on my about page. So the website is basically teespring.com/CaliKidOfficial store. So these are the items that I currently have on there. So got all types of stuff. I got hoodies, t-shirts, mugs, phone cases, sweatshirts, tote bags, tanks, socks, stickers, all types of stuff, pillows. So I got pretty much anything you will need. But this is the merch for my Euphoria album. So this is like the t-shirt. You get the album cover on the front, and then on the back you get the track listing of the album. So make sure you guys support and purchase some of these. You got t-shirt. You can either get the t-shirt, you can get the hoodie. And then I also got for women as well. So I got everybody pretty much covered. So that's pretty much going to do it for this podcast. I appreciate you all for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Also, leave some comments below. Let me know what you think about, you know, each episode. I would appreciate the feedback. I also have an email address, ckopodcast@gmail.com. You guys can send questions into there. I'll post the email in the description below. But until next week's episode, peace.